What are like things that people often do where if they fix this like minor thing, they would see major results? Is there like something very specific like that? Like where you're like, oh, you're not getting your full range of motion, or you need to spend X amount of seconds in your eccentric contraction.
Sure.
Like what are the things that you think really help?
Tons. A few big ones. Getting into a deeply uncomfortable stretch position for the muscle. So if you're doing dumbbell bench, not just going to here, but going all the way down to where your pecs are like, oh, geez, that's where a lot of the growth happens. That's a big one. Another one is taking every single one of your working sets, like a set of 10 you rack, very close to muscular failure. So if I see you at the gym and you're benching, you're doing this, rack, wait. I'm like, how many reps did you have in there until you couldn't do it? You're like, oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
50?
Like 50, a million, infinity, functionally infinity. We just can't even estimate. Most of your sets after your warm up, the last rep should be like, and then you rack. Now you're working hard. You stack together multiple sets like that, going through a deep range of motion, you're getting results. Another one is how many sets you're doing total per muscle group in the gym. Mm-hmm. Some females will be like, I want to grow my glutes. Like I want that shelf. Mm-hmm. And they like do 3 sets of lunges and they're like, okay, that's it. What's next? We got shoulders. Your body can recover if you work up to it from 5 to 10 working sets for a single muscle group 3 or 4 times per week. So not only can you do 5 to 10 sets per muscle group, maybe with 2 or 3 exercises, but also part 4 is you can train more often than you think. So if you think like, oh, like I need to hit my glutes once a week, my shoulders once, nope. And females recover faster than males. Mm-hmm. So if you're no longer tired in the muscle feels normal, it's no longer palpably sore, you can go again. And that might be the next day or 2 days later. So if you really want to work on your glutes and your shoulders, you can train them Monday, Wednesday, Friday, train them through a full range of motion, deep stretch, train them very close to failure on the working sets, do 5, 6, 7, 8 working sets per muscle per session, hard, do 3 sessions a week. And the last one, not really a surprise or a quick unlock, but consistency. And that doesn't mean you don't take a few weeks off here and there of just doing nothing. That's good for the body. It's good for the mind. Every year, a few weeks of just fuck you. I'm in Aruba. Where? Don't worry about it. You can't reach me. I'm not even at a hotel. I'm just lost.
Right.
That's awesome. But if you can string together 2 to 3 month phases of you're hitting the gym more of the days that you plan to than not, you're going to see results because you can do all the things right and have an amazing workout. But an amazing workout is, to use a sexual analogy, is like an awesome thrust. Can you imagine you're the dude, you're on top of the girl, you're like, ugh, and she's like, oh, and you're like, what'd you think about that? She's like, I honestly like to see about 1,500 more of those. Chop, chop. One's not going to cut. One's a good start, but come on.
Right.
And so people will be like, oh man, I had a great week of working out. I hear that, and a part of me is like, that is awesome. Go. But a part of me is like, so what?
Yeah. Gotta keep going.
I'm not trying to be cynical, but like my better angels of my nature are like, that's great. Let's see week 2. Because if you stack 8 weeks of all the tips I just gave, you are going to look and feel and perform differently. But if you mess up a bunch of those, you get this sad situation that we were sort of talking about earlier, which is like, oh, you work out on paper, but you tell people you work out, they do one of these, you're like, I work out, and they're like, oh. Like, what the hell did you look me up and down for? Yeah. You're like, ideally, you want to get to the point where you don't have to tell people you work out. They're like, what's your workout? And you're like, oh, well, how did you know? They're like, shut up, stop, tell me your workout. So.
Yeah. You mentioned glutes. So what are the best exercises to grow your glutes?
Finally,
this is a personal question.
This is going to be on the YouTube watch time. It's going to be, this is the spike for the podcast. So the glutes are trainable through a bunch of different movements. And so my big thing is don't restrict yourself to just one best thing. Mm-hmm. It's like being on like a really fancy cruise ship and seeing an amazing dessert buffet. And you're like, come here, worker. What's the best dessert? He's going to be like, what? There's like dozens of them. They're all amazing. So glute exercises such as deficit deadlifts are amazing. Basically picking up a bar from the ground, but from below the floor. So the plates are smaller, or your stand-up platform puts the glutes into a crazy stretch. is heavily loadable is awesome. You can do wide stance and even normal stance squatting. That's really great. You can do any kind of loaded hip thrusts. However, don't just go in the gym, lay down on the mats with your hands down and just hip thrust like this until you're blue in the face. And not even blue in the face because you never even got close to failure. Set up a bench or get to the machine, put some weight on those hips and hip thrust through a full range of motion and then eccentrically control on the way back down. Hard sets of 15, 20 reps. That's going to be brutal. So like all of these exercises I'm suggesting, these are not go through the motion exercises. The last category of exercises, sorry, two more. One is kickbacks. They're decent. You can do them with a cable. You can do them with a kickback machine. The more you stretch up at the top, the better. They're cool. They're not as effective as the others. The raw stimulus magnitude just isn't as great, but they're effective, especially peppered in with, like Monday and Wednesday, you did deadlifts and super crazy amount of squats. Friday, you might be just toasted. So like maybe some isolation work is good. And then lastly, what I consider probably on average the tip of the spear, the most efficient and effective glute exercise is any variety of lunge, but specifically front foot elevated lunges. These can be done on a Smith machine. So you get a little platform that's like 2 or 3 inches above the ground. You put it up front. You put your front foot on it. You take your back foot and you just barely push off with it at all for stability. You grab the Smith machine bar, load some weight on there after warming up. You go all the way down slow and controlled until your knee touches the ground gently. Because your front foot is elevated and your knee touches all the way to the ground, that front glute is being loaded maximally with highest forces at its least advantage position, and it's mega stretched. And we know that stretching under load causes lots of growth. And so this is one of these things where you haven't done this before and you're doing it close to failure. Do one set for each leg and don't do any more glutes that day, because you're going to be so sore. You're going to be able to like sit down on a toilet without screaming. And people are like, are you okay in that stall? Like, I typically don't ask this, but you're screaming like, I'm fine. This is my glutes. Front foot elevated lunges, walking lunges. But again, with dumbbells, with barbells, with kettlebells, with a weight vest, with something. If it's your body weight and it's tough for just a few reps, body weight until you can do 20 or 30 reps. And when it's not tough, you grab weights, challenging the musculature. That's going to grow the glutes. If you do a deadlift and it looks like a deadlift and it's good technique, but you're using 80 pounds with one of those preloaded bars, but you're strong enough for the same reps to do 160 pounds, you're just moving around, which is good for general health and good for you feeling like you did something. It's not going to grow the glutes. There's a problem in gyms across America of males, on average, some, not all, being too egotistical and too prideful to do good technique and to stop short of ripping themselves into pieces. They just get hurt all the time because they're, I can do 300 pounds. Like, I don't think you can. Like, spot me, bro. That's guys. The extremes on females, not all females, but some, is they're very good technique, good consistency, just aren't grinding it and throwing themselves into challenge enough, which means either not heavy enough or not close enough to failure, or when you fix one or the two of those, both get fixed because you're like, I'm not getting close to failure. I'm not training heavy enough. If I just did the same reps, but I trained much heavier, I would fix both of those. If you're female and you want to have better results and bigger glutes, ask yourself all those questions of, are you doing the simple things to elevate your plan that we talked about earlier? Are you using those core exercises of deadlifts and also hip hinges of a variety of modalities? Good mornings are great. Stiff-legged deadlifts are great. Now, they hit your hamstrings too, but also hamstrings, at least aesthetically. You put on a pair of tight jeans and you have a nice glutes, like it looks great. You have nice hamstrings and glutes. It somehow synergistically makes you look just totally obscene, like in the best way possible. So consider those kinds of exercises. And when you're doing them, start slow. Good technique at all times. Control the motion on the way down. Pause and come up. But over time, once you're warmed up and after a few weeks of getting to know the exercises, start turning that dial on how uncomfortable you can become with good technique in those exercises. I set a goal to do 10 reps, but I hit 9 and I can still keep going. Go, go, go. You're at 14 and your legs are shaking. Okay, now you can stop. You're going to feel it the next day. You're going to be a little bit sore, a little bit tight. That's what you want.
Let's talk a little bit about strength versus hypertrophy. So some people want to train to be strong but not get big, and some people want to get big and they will likely be strong, but maybe, they'll be as strong as someone who's not necessarily as big as them. How do you change a program for someone who just wants to get strong? Do you do calisthenics? Do you do just body weight? Is it still the same? You're still going to failure?
If somebody is a very new beginner to lifting, they don't have a choice. All resistance training is going to get you bigger and stronger. There's not really a dependable way to train, even if you just do 1 rep max at a time and leave, that in your first few weeks or few months won't get you a little bit more jacked. But if you've been training for a little while, you can train in such a way that only makes you stronger but no bigger. Or you can train in a way that makes you a little bit stronger over time, over the long term, much stronger, but generally just makes you bigger and bigger and bigger. And it all comes down to repetition ranges. So if you're doing something roughly between 5 and 30 reps of a weight that's very close to failure for you in that rep range, as you do more and more sets, you get more and more growth. That's how you train for size. For strength, training in the 3 to 6 rep range, training in the 2, 3, 4, 5 rep range, especially 2, 3, and 4 rep sets, close to failure, but it's just way heavier. And not doing quite as many sets, maybe 2/3 the number of sets that you would typically do for muscle growth. If you've been training for a while, won't appreciably cause as much, or maybe sometimes even at all, muscle gain, but because it trains your architectural parts of your muscles, the connections between the different parts and the which way the fascicles point and all that stuff, and also trains your nervous system, it's going to get you substantially stronger for a long time. So basically, sets of 2 to 5 repetitions for strength, sets of 5 to 30 repetitions, but with more sets for muscle size. And if you're consistently, when you're training, getting pumps, when your muscles feel like swollen and tight, and you're getting delayed onset soreness, like a day later, you're like, oh my God, it really hurts. You're growing. And if you're providing the food, you'll hypertrophy, you'll grow muscle. But if after most of your sessions, your muscles feel a little tired, but otherwise they don't get a pump during the session or anything like that, and you're eating in a way that's not gaining you body weight, you're unlikely to gain as much, or even in some cases, any muscle mass whatsoever, if the number of sets is kept to like 2 or 3 per workout per muscle versus like 5, 6, 7, 8. That's when your body's like, okay, I got it. Signal received. I'm going to start to grow.
Got it. For health, probably having some muscular hypertrophy is beneficial though, right? In terms of having more muscle mass, because it's continuously declining as we age.
Yes. You can actually prevent that decline completely. There's no reason that someone in their 70s can't have as much muscle as the average untrained person in their early 20s. It's not that high of a bar. Resistance training has such an unbelievable ability to pack on muscle that you can be as muscular as the typical young, healthy person almost at any age of your life. Of course, you have to try. Muscularity confers massive health advantages, especially if yours is low and you bring it up to kind of a normative standard. Muscle allows, just by pulling on your bones constantly, it makes your bones stronger. Muscle mass allows you to be strong enough to have activities of daily living completely squared away. Muscle mass works as a baseline blood glucose modulator, because it consumes blood glucose all the time, annoyingly so, and it keeps your blood glucose dynamics much better than if you don't have it. And there are many people in this world that are relatively young, in their 30s. They have a very normal by BMI body weight, but they have very little skeletal muscle and concomitantly lots of fat tissue. And they're pre-diabetic, diabetic, hypertensive, the whole thing. In addition to that, working out itself, working out hard to get that muscle, is a massive driver of parasympathetic tone all over. It relaxes you in a deep way that you can't experience unless, like, a hard day's work relaxes you better than anything in this world. Like, there's no wusa yoga that'll just be like, pound your body and brain into submission. You show up at home afterwards, you're like, that's it, you're done. That's a really good thing for health. If you're never challenging your muscles and your body, you can accumulate a chronic level of baseline stress, an overdrive of the fight or flight response that never has a gasket to pull off and put that steam away. If you have an exercise plan that really pushes you, not only do you build muscle and have all the great stuff happen, you can really blow off steam in a way that's phenomenal for stress management. So I could be on here for another hour talking about health benefits of muscle. They're intense. So up to the point where you think your muscles look grotesque and you don't want any more, it's probably more healthy to continue to put on muscle.
So I want to ask a little bit about anabolic steroids.
I can't talk about that. I'm totally kidding. I do it all the time.
So you've been open that you have taken some performance enhancing drugs, and we in medical school learn very little about anabolic steroids. But I want to understand, because I think it's really important for people to realize, one, that it's much more common than we think it is. Like many people use them. But why did you personally start?
For a few reasons. One is at the time when my colleagues and I were getting into the industry of fitness, like the drug-free part was teeny tiny compared to what it is now. And sort of we surmised that to be taken seriously, you had to be like the kind of size that can only be achieved with steroids. So that's that. Another part is I've been a nerd much longer than I've been a lifter. And the idea that you can, through literal chemistry, modify your physique and performance in a way that is both profound and subtly and not so subtly dangerous is like working on the new stealth plane at Area 51 kind of badass, you know? It's just kind of like, wait a minute, I can use science to modify my body to become like a fucking cyborg. Yeah, count me in. And so that's really like almost all of it right there. Yeah.
So obviously since then you've grown, you've obviously become
literally because of the steroids.
That too. But it's been years, and also you're a public figure. So do you feel like
that's weird?
right? You are, unfortunately,
yeah. Yes.
Whether you wanted to or not when you started. So do you feel like there's some responsibility in terms? Obviously, you talk about it, but do you worry that maybe you're sending a message that like people should take steroids?
Well, so I know for a fact I'm not, because I'm on record like a ton on YouTube talking about how steroids will mess you up at length. In every video we make at RP on the YouTube channel, every video about steroids that talks about their upsides always mentions their downsides. And I have a bit of insight into downsides of steroids that you won't catch in the medical literature because it's not experientially derived, and also because it's like very succinct. And it was, the research ended in 1978, so they're like, oh, that's all you get. Which there's all that stuff is correct. Steroids will mess you up like that, like the medical literature says, but they mess you up in a ton of different ways the medical literature hasn't even caught up to yet. So I'm always really open about that. Now, so if you're looking for a holistic idea of what it is I think about steroids, you will find it very, very quickly on the internet. Even not by accident. You just like type into Google or YouTube or ChatGPT, like, hey, what is Mike Israetel downsides of steroids? Search. You're going to get like 5 hours of audio and video of me talking about it. However, to your point, I am also at the same time variously extolling the benefits of anabolic steroids, mostly to linear things like they'll get you more jacked. I never really got into that lifestyle route of like, you got to take steroids. It feels amazing. Like to me, it never really felt that amazing. I'm actually on TRT right now, and I feel the best that I have in years. And so I hate steroids, how they make me feel it's fucking toxic. But, there's people that will extol a variety of their lifestyle benefits. I'm not even one of those people. But it's absolutely literally true that steroids have a variety of physiological benefits, like increases in muscle mass and so on and so forth, and strength. And we already tried the thing, especially in the medical community, but in the community writ large, of like not telling people the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and it failed disastrously. Like I didn't use drugs because McGruff the crime dog told me not to, but I was maybe the only person in my high school that listened to McGruff the crime dogs. I didn't have any friends. And so it turns out if you tell people like, okay, so like drugs are, I remember I was involved in a conversation in the 7th grade with a few folks. We were like sitting out, like they put you in working groups, and some groups go in the hall and some stay in the classroom. We were in the hall, and they were talking about like marijuana and using it in 7th grade. So I automatically assumed they were degenerate drug addicts that were like seconds away from homelessness and depravity. And I was like, why do you do them? Like, do they like taste like strawberries or something? And I like look back on that conversation in my mental model. I had no idea that taking something and putting it in your body could make you feel differently. Like if they said, like, when you smoke this thing, it feels like you're in the most exciting time ever with your friends, I'd have been like, oh shit, where's it at? Just kidding. I would have been like, you guys are degenerate drug addicts. But not telling kids, listen, drugs actually are really fun. They're really fun. That's why people do them. And in a variety of circumstances, they will fuck up your life beyond recognition to where you can't have any more fun. If you tell them, listen, drugs just mess you up, and they find out drugs are fun, They're like, well, okay, so they lied to me about they're not fun. Did they lie to me about the messed up thing too? I know a lot of guys that use tons of steroids, they just don't even listen to doctors anymore. Some of these guys are not in good health. But if you're a doctor and you want to talk to them about it, they don't want to talk to you. You lied to them. The formal position of various medical associations in the United States used to be that anabolic steroids do not enhance athletic performance. They published this willingly in the 1980s because they wanted to discourage people from using. Everyone knew they fucking jacked you up, but they had a few bullshit studies for 4-6 weeks at a time with very low dose.
Yeah.
Yes. With like, oh, it doesn't have any effects. Like, stop. That's not helping. It
was like
did
a
not
tiny
help
dose.
you.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah.
And so my approach is give people at least my understanding of the whole truth. Steroids have upsides, they have downsides. For most people, the downsides are categorically worse than the upside. Unless you're interested in looking like this, hair loss, there's erectile dysfunction, that's a whole other thing, right? But the whole gamut, right? They're terrible, but they also have really big upsides. So if someone is listening to my stuff and from that they glean that steroids are great and I'm going to use them, sorry, but they could have gleaned that anywhere else. Does it fill me with a bit of trepidation that the young people could be using steroids because in some Instagram or TikTok clip they saw my endorsement of them but never saw the 18-page caveat after? Yeah. Yeah. It's messed up. Can I switch to be the person that only ever talks about steroid downsides? No. Because first of all, like, I'm trying to real deal everyone. I'm trying to cut everybody the real deal. I'm not trying to BS people. There's been enough BS.
Right.
And also, I will lose massive credibility if I start just forgetting that the upsides exist. It's like a rich dude says like, more money, more problems. Like, shut up. You want to get rid of your problems? Give me some money. They're like, well, no, okay. So if someone's like, well, steroids are all bad. Like, what? Really? It's just you're just lying to people. What do you think? I don't know.
No, I mean, like, I think that we need to talk about them. I mean, the fact that there's been no studies on anabolic steroids for decades is a big miss in the medical community, because I see patients who come to me and they're like, I am on them, right? And now what do I do? And so I'm like working with them, trying to get them on a safer regimen of things to get them into a regular, TRT, because their testosterone's plummeting when they're trying to go off their steroids. And it's like you as a doctor now know very little because no one taught you. There's no research because
there's not much to know.
It's illegal, right? I mean, it's illegal. And so no one's going to volunteer for a research study. There's just so much like fear around it. And I think it's a problem. I think we need to talk about the bad. And obviously there is a reason people take it, right? There's a reason. But, have an educated discussion. Like, don't get it from your dealer in the back of the gym, like where they're making it in their bathtub, right? Or whatever. Like, that's what scares me, right? And I just think, I think we need to educate people, and we can't just say no. I agree with you. You can't just say no, don't do that, right?
I mean, you can. It just has a certain expected effect that's been very evident from all the other drug policy we tried Just Say No with. It's not that great. Saying no has a certain effect. If you give people more nuance and you're more truthful with them, on average, that tends to work out better. Obviously, the polar opposite of that is like you just tell them how great drugs are and they should use them all the time. That would get the most people into trouble, but no one's really, advocating that.
I can argue from the sex side, right? People are like, oh, my kid's never going to watch porn. They're never going to see porn. Why are we talking about porn? I was like, everybody's watching porn. Let's be realistic.
Your kids are lying to you.
Yeah. And your kids are going to see it. Even if you put all the locks on their computers and their whatever, they're going to see it, right? And
they're smarter than you with computers too.
Exactly. And so like we have to talk about it. Like you cannot dig your head in the sand and be like, my kid's not going to have sex. My kid's not going to watch porn. My kid's not going to experiment with or be approached by somebody with drugs. Like these things are going to happen, and we have to teach them why people do these things and like why not to.
Yeah. I've been a bit vocal every now and again about my understanding of pornography and its effects on various populations. And I get infinite amounts of shit from all over the internet for being like an upsides and downsides person with regards to pornographic consumption.
Me too.
Right? Versus someone who's just like, oh, porn is like the literal manifestation of Satan himself. And if you endorse it, you're just ruining society and destroying people. And like, I have all the time in the world if that's true. Like that's probably true for like fentanyl, like someone's like, yeah, I'm getting into recreational fentanyl. You're like, don't do that. That's not a good idea. But like I've examined at various points the actually sort of impressive empirical literature on pornographic consumption and use and demography. And if you're looking for like porn, like whole cloth destroying millions of people's lives, like on average, it's just, you're going to look at a long time. It's like back when they used to tell in the 80s, like, you take steroids, you're going to die, like right there in the locker room. And like bodybuilders and lifters and football players were like, where are all the dead people? Like I had an uncle that did steroids a long time, and he died when he was like 56 from a heart attack, but he also had like 18 steaks a day and just like, huge anger problems, always elevated blood pressures, always confounding factors. And so when people point out with pornography, they're like, well, it can lead to isolation, it can lead to loneliness, it can lead to abuse and addiction. My response always is like, okay, under what conditions and in what fraction of the population? Because if 90% of the fraction of adult film content enjoyers are like otherwise totally healthy, and it has demonstrably empirically no marginally negative effect on their lives and probably a small positive one, it's just really difficult to trot out the story of like porn will ruin you. Like if you're a certain kind of person, a certain kind of point in their lives, porn can fuck you up.
Yeah.
There's an infinite dark rabbit hole you can go down and never get out. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. We can't keep saying that to everyone, because like everyone has friends. They're like, well, my buddies from college jerk off to porn all the time and they're totally fine and totally adapted. And you're like,
exactly.
Oh, but just you wait. The guy's 97, you're at his funeral. Like, is it porn that killed him? They're like, no, it was a bus. You're like, shit, the porn never got to him. They lied to me my whole life. Like, again, like brutal honesty with a combination of upsides and downsides is probably a good way to approach a lot of things. That doesn't mean you need to have all kinds of technical nuance.
Right.
You can tell kids, look, steroids for adults can beef them up, get you looking like Captain America. Problem is, they have a laundry list of side effects. And, when kids are old enough, 13, 14, 15, especially if I'm talking to boys, I've talked to the gym to 14, 15-year-old kids. They're like, what about Tren? I'm like, you ever want to really just get it on with a girl? They're like, yeah, like, and your dick just doesn't work. They're like, no, like, well, guess what steroids do, fellas? Some of them make Mr. Willie not want to come out anymore. And they're like, what? I'm like, oh, we're just kidding. For you, that probably won't happen. It'll just close your growth plates early, so you'll never reach adult height. And they're like, what? And they're like, oh, do you guys like my haircut? They're like, oh, I'm gonna stop. I'm like, steroids cause balding. And they're like, okay, I'm out, man. I'm done. And like a lot of times the stuff you'll see in the medical literature is like hurts your liver, hurts your kidneys. Like, I'm not the first person to tell you this. To a 14 or 15-year-old, liver and kidneys are esoteric concepts. Right. Like, okay, sweet. Like I can take like 18 Adderalls, have 5 beers, nothing happens to me. I'm fucking immortal. Cool. But like you start talking about erectile dysfunction, you start talking about sometimes the intelligence loss, because there's some decent literature suggests there's at least short-term intelligence blunting with steroids. Mm-hmm. Again, for a 14-year-old, we're like, who cares? But the adult height one, the growth plates closing, and the balding situation is one of those, like, if you give them enough of those, and you're like, dude, this is all real stuff. And I'm not talking about like, oh, every now and again it happens. Like tons of dudes are dealing with this. They're like, And all of a sudden they walk home, like they got to the gym, they want to use steroids. They're walking home and they're like, I'll just stick to creatine for a few months.
Yeah.
Fuck all that.
Yeah.
And none of it's a lie. Because if you start lying to people, you lose your credibility with them. Who are they going to listen to next? I don't know, drug dealers or something? Right. And those guys are like, yeah, take all the steroids you can.
If you guys like that clip from this episode of the Rena Malik MD podcast with Dr. Mike Israetel, make sure to check out the full episode right here.